Hello, everybody. It's me, Allure Burns, and welcome back to my channel. If you are returning, I am very glad to have you back. And if you are here for the first time, I'm super excited and so excited that you get jazz hand. Yes. Marc is in a jazz hand with me. So as you can see, the double jazz hand is coming from Marc Sedembrino, who is here to talk with me about the new Weight Watchers, or WW app for children, which is very problematic, I think. So I'm going to let Marc introduce himself, and then we are going to jump into everything. So Marc.
Yeah, hey y'all. I'm Marc. I am a yoga teacher and sociology professor in Hammond, Louisiana. Some of you may already know me from Instagram, where you can follow me. My handle is @EmbraceWhatIs, and I'm sure Laura will leave a little link in the description. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. So I guess we should begin because I'm like ready.
I know, like, so I'll just say, I actually was a little late to the news that Weight Watchers had introduced this app. I only found out because people were really talking about it on Instagram, and they were so mad, and I was like, what's going on? And then I saw, oh, Weight Watchers is changing their name to just WW. Is that happening? Yeah. Do you just call it WW?
They rebranded, I think, several months ago. So I think like at the beginning of 2019, they rebranded to WW, and that's about the same time that Oprah invested like a ton of money into them, which, spoiler alert, she lost $58 million investing in Weight Watchers. So, I mean, she made some money, but then their stock tanked not too long ago. So, and the thunder just is perfect for that, right? So she lost some money on that one.
Yeah, so I guess WW, that feels so awkward to say. I'm just going to call it Weight Watchers.
Weight Watchers, that's what they are.
That feels more comfortable. So Weight Watchers introduced this new kids app called Kurbo, I think, Kurbo, which, what is that? I don't even know what that name is. I guess it sounds like for children. It sounds fun, but it's like a nonsense word. And so I was just looking, let's be real, I have not done a lot of research about this. This video is like, I heard about this, I had a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings about it, and I was like, I need to talk about this with somebody. And Marc, you were the first person. I was like, I want to talk to Marc about this. Like, this is the person that I want to talk to about this. And so this is like a real like first discussion between us. I specifically didn't talk to you about it before we filmed because I wanted everyone else to be able to watch us of our first conversation.
Watch it unfold.
Yeah, and so I know a little bit about it. I know that it's apparently for kids 8 to 17. That's what this New York Times op-ed piece just told me. And so I'm just like, 8 to 17. You know, like, you kind of expect a lot of diet culture stuff around teenagers, which I don't like, but I am not shocked. But 8 years old, I just like, I'm so like, just first impression was like, are you kidding me? This is nuts.
And that's really interesting too, because I think like for most apps, like social networks and stuff, you have to be 13 or older to sign up without your permission, right? So like, it's not even like in that age range that everything else is, right? Like,
it's so young.
Really skewing so much younger.
It's so young. And like, what's sad is that I don't have the studies in front of me, but there are studies that have shown that kids as young as like 4 and 5 are already like saying, oh, I feel fat, or oh, I'm getting bullied because of my weight. And so like, I'm kind of on one hand a little surprised that they didn't make the app for like 4-year-olds. I'm glad that they didn't.
Yeah.
But it seems like, oh, well, if you're going to capitalize on 8-year-olds, you might as well capitalize on 4-year-olds. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh. Okay, so I obviously think that this app is problematic. It's not something that I would, if I had children, which I don't. And so it is like, on one hand, this is like a perspective from somebody who does not have a child. And also, you don't have kids.
I don't have a kid.
Yeah, so we can only speak for ourselves and like our experiences as children growing up into adults within the world of diet culture. And so I kind of wish that one of us had kids so that we could speak as a parent, but you know,
To that effect, though, I just want to say, like, and we'll talk about it at some point, but like, it is hard being fat in this world, right? Like, this entire society is against fat people, in all sorts of ways, right? And so, as a parent, I can understand, like, if you have a fat child, wanting to save them from some of the torture that you and I have experienced as fat people. So it's like, I don't necessarily fault parents, right? And we can talk about that a little bit more, right? In terms of my experience, I mean, my family was putting me on diets as a kid, right? I don't necessarily fault them, because I think really it comes from a place of parents just want to do what they perceive as best for their child. And so I don't want to come off at any point today as like I'm going to demonize someone for caring about their kid, right? Even if maybe their choice for caring about their kid could be problematic and have long-term consequences.
I think people do what they think is best at the time.
Yeah.
And so like that sentiment that you just shared is exactly what I was going to say about my own experience as a child being put on a diet, as a child being taken to Weight Watchers. My mom took me to Weight Watchers, and I'm going to discuss this more in a little bit. And that was like really the start of a lifetime of disordered eating and body image issues and, you know, problems. But I don't blame my mom, because she was looking out for me the best way that she knew how. At that point, every doctor would have said, yeah, go do that. You know, like, this is what needs to be done. Do these things. And so, you know, you do the best you can with what you have. And at that point, like, there wasn't this movement of, you know, there was probably an underground little movement, but there wasn't as big of a movement about health at every size, intuitive eating, fat liberation. Like, this stuff was not as big as it is now. So I totally agree. Like, and I've been a little nervous to have this conversation, because I know that my family sometimes watches my videos, and I don't want anyone to feel like I blame them, or that I'm mad at them, or that I'm like, you know, talking smack about what they did, because I probably would have done the same thing in their place, you know? Like, you operate with the knowledge that you have.
Totally.
Okay. I'm like, oh my God, I feel my face is hot. Like, this is such a charged topic, you know, health and eating and body size, like such huge and very personal things. So let's just talk about, well, I guess we kind of already started. So as children being put on diets, how it makes us feel, and what we're thinking about the fact that Weight Watchers has this app now.
Yeah. And Laura, maybe like something that I could ask you is maybe to share a little bit more of your story, because one of the things that's been really helpful for me is just seeing and hearing women's experiences. Like growing up and being put on diets, being taken to Weight Watchers. So there was a movement on social media called hashtag Wake Up Weight Watchers. And so people were like really going at Weight Watchers on Instagram and Twitter. And I got to read a lot of women's stories of being kids taken to Weight Watchers and how that affected them. So maybe you can share with me and with everyone watching a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah.
I think our stories will be different.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't remember when I got fat, but I was very thin, or like whatever, a thin child. And then at a certain point I got fat, probably around like, kindergarten age. So like from a very young age. And I honestly like don't have like a ton of memories about that time in my life. There's a lot going on. There was some trauma, and I think that is what kind of started me like with disordered eating. And I think that it was more about a comfort thing then, just like eating a lot was comforting, which is very common with people. But I think that things really kicked off because I had gained weight, I was then taken to Weight Watchers and put on, you know, like calorie counting or points, or I don't remember. I'm 37. It's been a long time. I don't remember what iteration of Weight Watchers it was then, but I know that my mom did it with me. And so, because my mom has weight cycled in her life as well. And when she was a child, her mom would put her on diets. So what I do appreciate is that because she had that background, she really tried hard with me not to body shame me. She really she really tried hard to avoid the stuff that ended up happening anyway. But it could have been worse, I guess. If I had also had a family that was like harsh with me and body shaming and like real nitpicky about food. So I am really grateful about that. But we went to Weight Watchers together. I had my little passport where they would like write your weight and put stamps and stickers in or whatever. You go to the meeting, you know, they weigh you, like the whole thing, the classic Weight Watchers experience. But when you're a child, you just believe everything everyone tells you. And so you're like, oh, well, this must be what I need. And I must need to implement these restrictive food choices in my life. And, you know, I need to do these things that don't feel good or right in my body because they're telling me that I should. Because you just believe, right? You know? And so I was actually just talking about this at book club this weekend, which is really interesting. I've had a revelation recently, which is kind of a like no duh moment for a lot of people, but I sometimes am a little late to things. And I have recently realized that the dieting, the calorie counting, the portion control, the trips to Overeaters Anonymous that I later took also with my mom, really set up in me a feeling of food scarcity that has impacted me throughout my life by me always feeling like there's not enough food. Like if I'm ordering food, I'm like, oh, let's get an extra pizza because there's not enough pizza for everyone. Or let's, you know, like, let's also get breadsticks or dessert, or, you know, like whatever, if you're ordering pizza, or like, you know, let's get an extra, you know, Chinese broccoli for the table because like, then I know that I can eat this. And it's like, I already have plenty of food and intellectually I can know that, but it's like something inside of me is like, no, order more because you might not have enough and you don't want to be hungry. And I never thought of that as like the food scarcity kind of thing, because growing up, we always had food. It wasn't a problem. The pantry was stocked. I didn't worry about where my meals were coming from. And so I didn't connect. And then I was reading something or listening to a podcast or something, and they meant it was not about fatness or eating disorders, but it was about food scarcity in households and food deserts. And they said something about food scarcity and made an offhand remark that really just triggered this for me. And I was like, whoa, that's what it is. And so from a young age, restricting calories, restricting portion size, it really set in me that there's not enough food, because I guess I was always hungry or always feeling like there wasn't enough on my plate. I don't know, you know, I haven't unpacked this a lot, but that was like a big revelation for me because it has been a big part of my life, developing binge eating disorder, right? And continuing like through adulthood, you know, like I'm in recovery from binge eating disorder and I'm like, you know, mostly recovered, but I still binge sometimes. It happens, you know, and it's always coming from that feeling of scarcity. And so this has been a big breakthrough for me, kind of relating these things, and really hearing about this app, I think helped to bring this up for me. Sorry, this is like super long-winded, but it's like exciting to figure this out, you know?
Yeah. And it's really cool to hear you talking about this, having this revelation about scarcity, because that's actually a revelation that I've recently had, and I've been kind of thinking through that. You know, I do like the same things, like making sure there's enough food, like ordering extra, you know, not necessarily even wanting to share my food with other people because, you know, this fear of there's not going to be enough for me and I'm going to be left feeling hungry.
Yeah.
And like that shows up in my life in weird ways. So like, if mealtime is delayed, right? Like I get hangry, right? But it really has to do with like, I want to eat, right? And something's preventing me from being able to do that. And I think it does go back to times when, like, as a child, I was never put on Weight Watchers, right? But certainly doctors, you know, as a kid, I was kind of like you know, I was thin or normal weight for a while, right? Whatever normal, and I'm doing air quotes, please, everybody see that, right? Thin or normal weight, right? And then there got to a point where, you know, I got chubby and husky, and then, you know, the progression, right? So I went from being the average child to being fat. And so the doctor's response is, oh, well, put him on a diet, right? So I remember as a kid, like, my mom trying to teach me, like, what a portion size is, and being like, no, you can only have 2 cookies because that's what one portion is, right? And this feeling of restriction that came into it, I'm like, well, why do I have to have 2 cookies? Want 3 cookies or 4 cookies, or I want to eat more. But like the tricky thing that I came into as a kid, and I think this has to do with being a boy, right? Being socialized and raised as a boy. And so I want to talk a little bit about male privilege in relation to being fat. But like at the same time that I was being told I need to lose weight, I need to be on a diet, I was also being like celebrated and encouraged for being able to eat a lot of food, right? That looks like different things. So that looks like, you know, being in the cafeteria as a kid and like somebody doesn't finish their lunch and like suddenly it's like a challenge for me to eat their food, right? Or, you know, just being in places where it's like, you know, I like people would cheer because I have a healthy appetite, or I felt as if like, you know, people were like, oh, look at him being this young growing boy eating, right?
Yeah. Bringing it back to this app that Weight Watchers launched. So my like gut reaction was, oh my God, this is so harmful. And I think that was probably your reaction as well.
Yes.
So let's talk about like why especially we think it's harmful, because there are definitely people out there that are like, I don't understand why people are pissed off about this. I don't understand why it's harmful. And so I really want to address this in the talk because I want to get that information out there, because I think it's really important. Because I think if you have never been fat, if you've never like lived a life of weight cycling and diet, and we'll talk about weight cycling in a minute, but if you've never lived this life, you may not understand why something like this could create like or set off in a direction of harm for the rest of your life. And so when I was talking about going to Weight Watchers as a child, what that told me was that my body was wrong, and that the right way to have my body was to be smaller. And that when it was smaller, then it would be okay, I would be acceptable, I would then be worthy, and that my body, and as I was in that moment, was not okay, it was not acceptable, and it was not worthy. And those feelings have plagued me my entire life. And I think they, you know, when you're a child, you're so impressionable. And so that really, it's like you're locking it in like for life. You're like basically telling the child like, oh, you know, you're going to feel like crap for the rest of your life unless you work. Like I work so hard to not feel like crap about myself. You know, it's a daily practice of like swimming against the tide. I always talk about it as this like flowing river of like diet culture and beauty standards, and I have to constantly swim against it every day of my life, and I can never stop, because if I stop, I'm going to get taken away by the current, right? And so as a child, number one, the food scarcity thing, which I've just realized about myself, but that really set me up to have really disordered thoughts about food, about what food is good, what food is bad. So I set up this like dichotomy of like, you know, moralizing food, good and bad, clean, dirty, you know, all those things, which it sticks with you. What you learn when you're a child sets you up for the future.
I can't think about food without the rules popping in, right? So I'm always, the rules are still there, and it's the same thing. Like I'm gonna like go to the grocery store and I'm like, ooh, I really want this. But, you know, in the back of my head, it says all this other stuff. And I really have had to just be like, no, I want this. I'm putting it in the cart and I take it home. Right.
Yeah. But that's like, even with all the work that you've done,
yeah,
you know, to unlearn these thoughts and behaviors, like I'm the same way. I still have that like, oh, don't buy that because that's like junk food, bad food, you know? And I'm like, no, listen, if I want to eat these red velvet Oreos, because they're delicious. Yeah. I'm going to buy these Oreos, but I still sometimes, not all the time, but I still sometimes have that moment of like, oh no, that's bad. Don't do that. Or like whatever, you know? And it's like, no, we're not there anymore. I'm allowed to buy these Oreos. I'm allowed to eat these Oreos. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so the app and being on Weight Watchers as a child, well, I can't speak for the app, but being on Weight Watchers as a child, really setting up these thoughts and behaviors. So disordered eating, feelings of food scarcity, leading to binge eating disorder for me, leading to self-harm, leading to super low confidence and self-esteem. Like, it's just like, it snowballs, and the older you get, the more socially acceptable it is to like outwardly talk about these things, right? And so to talk about dieting and to talk about how much you hate your thighs, or I don't know about you, but as a girl growing up, you would hang out with a group of girls and you would just sit around criticizing your body, you know? And so it's like, oh, I hate my thighs. Oh my God, me too. Oh, they're so awful. And they'd like pinch it. I mean, it's so like, oh, it's really sick what we teach children to do. So I don't know if that resonates for you or not.
Not as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can talk a little bit more about some of my experiences, I think, as we go on.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then weight cycling. So I said that we would come back to it. So let's just talk about weight cycling. So people, if you're not familiar with the idea of weight cycling, it just means that you lose weight and you gain it back. And then you lose weight and you gain it back. So yo-yo dieting is also like what they used to call it. The technical, like actual term for it is weight cycling. And it is, number one, emotionally damaging. If you've ever been on a diet and then gained it back, then you know what that feels like. And it is physically really damaging for your body. So I think I was looking at this New York Times op-ed piece that Christy, I'll link it in the description box. It's really good, and you should read it if you're interested in this. She's much more articulate than I am. She's much more focused, so you might want to take a look at that. But she was throwing out some studies and statistics, and she reminded me that 90% of people who go on a diet or who lose weight on a diet gain it back. 90%. So
actually,
that is
95.
Oh, in the thing it says 90.
95% of
so 95. So
5 years will gain
everybody thinks, oh, I'll be the one to keep it off. But statistically, you're probably not going to be the one to keep it off. And so when you gain it back, that does damage to your body. And then over time, as you cycle, weight cycling, you damage your metabolism, you damage your body's ability to manage the cortisol levels that your body creates, which causes inflammation in the body. Like, oh, you're basically just creating stress inside your body over and over again and making it harder and harder to lose that weight. So the more you try to lose weight, the less weight you can actually lose, which it's so screwed up. And, you know, I'm not a dietitian or a doctor. I'm not a scientist, whatever. So if you want like real terms and real numbers, you know, check out this op-ed piece that I'm going to link, and then we'll throw any other studies that we can find that are like good. But just like from what I have learned, and I have felt this now in my body, is a lifetime of losing weight. Listen, I'm really good at losing weight. I know how to do it. I have lost hundreds of pounds in my lifetime and gained them all back and plus some. And the more I do this, the harder it is to lose that weight, the more dramatic your weight loss approach has to be, and the more damage you do to your body. So that starts in childhood. That started with teaching me that I needed to restrict my food, I needed to exercise like a lot, or that I needed to like punish myself if I ate, you know, as a kid, if I had like ice cream for dessert, I knew that the next day in gym class I needed to go hard. You know, like that set up for me a cycle of thinking about food and my body and exercise that has persisted through my whole life.
Yeah, similar experiences for me, and I think one of the things I wanted to say as well is that like Kurbo, right? Like Kurbo is not the only problem, and Weight Watchers is not the issue. So I think, you know, I've seen some people saying like, oh, you know, it's not just Weight Watchers. And no, it's not just Weight Watchers, right?
It's diet culture.
Yeah, diet culture.
It's the whole thing.
Exactly. Diet culture and fat phobia are institutionalized, right? They are in every aspect of our social lives. And honestly, a lot of the fat shaming that I experienced as a child came from teachers, right? So it came especially from PE teachers, right? Mm-hmm. And that, I don't want to swear, but that physical fitness test.
The presidential fitness test?
The presidential physical fitness test.
We were just talking about this at book club.
Right? That they would put us through as children, right? And some of it is not that bad, right? So I remember some of it being like a fun challenge, right? But other aspects of it being like completely humiliating, right? Like
Yes.
when they get those calipers out, right?
Measuring your body fat in front of everyone.
Yeah. And in like, so in my elementary school, we didn't do that measure the body fat thing, right? But there was definitely, when I got to middle school, like they would have students measuring each other's body fat, right?
That's
And
so
it was
worse.
yeah, right. And I remember like letters being sent home to my parents about how like I need to do more to increase my physical fitness, and because I wasn't, and part of it too was like I thought it was like the biggest joke ever. So like running the mile, like I have distinct memories of, I think it was 5th grade, where my best friend and I were like, F this, and we decided to walk the entire thing. So we walked the entire thing. The PE teacher was fuming mad at us. And then like we sprinted like the last little stretch and collapsed like we were exhausted. And I can still hear the PE teacher screaming at us for like just making the whole thing a joke, right? Because clearly she was so invested in diet culture, right? But you know, even like taking nutrition classes as a kid, they teach you like in high school we had to take like a nutrition, like it was like a health class, but nutrition was really what they focused on. And it's like all of this calories in, calories out, good food, bad food.
And the food pyramid, but if you look at the materials, it's like sponsored by the beef industry or the dairy industry.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're like, we want you to eat this.
So like Kurbo is just the latest example, right? And there are lots of other apps out there. I saw people on social media talking about how, you know, in their high school, they use like MyFitnessPal or whatever other apps are out there to, you know, do this calories in, calories out, measure your macros. So like, don't get me wrong, right? Like all of that is a problem, right? And where I'm like, the thing that I've been pushing a lot on social media is that like the diet industry is in trouble, right? Like they know that more and more people like Laura and I, like the rest of the folks, maybe some of the other folks watching this, like we realize that like dieting is a bunch of bullshit. And we've been sold a bunch of BS our entire lives that has cost us thousands of dollars, tears upon tears, right? Like of emotional stress. And people are just not buying into it anymore, right? Yeah. So Weight Watchers has to change their name, right? They have to rebrand, change their name. And now they're targeting children, right? Like,
yeah, they want to lock them in as kids.
Yes, like cigarettes.
They grow up to become dieting adults.
Yeah, like cigarettes, right? Like, so I was really snarky on Twitter, and I was like, hey, Weight Watchers, are you going to include like a pack of Camels and a vape pen? Because, you know, when I smoked, I weighed less, right? Like, so maybe if we can just get the kids smoking too, why not, right? They just won't be fat.
Weight Watchers brand cigarettes.
Yeah. We should get paid for that idea. Like, you know, it's...
Yeah, and you know, you saying this reminded me, there's this company now, Noom, N-O-O-M, which is basically
everywhere.
Weight Watchers, but but they know that Weight Watchers isn't cool anymore, that there's like a body positive movement and blah, blah, blah. So they're like the same old shit, basically. It's the same thing. It's a, you know,
it's not a diet, right?
It's not a diet.
Yeah.
And like their tagline is like I don't remember what it is actually, but it's like basically like Weight Watchers is for old people. Noom is for young millennials that want the same thing and to be engaged in diet culture. Yes. But the way they're framing it, it's like they're trying to get away from that. But it's still this, it's just repackaged diet culture.
Totally.
But they're trying to lock in this younger generation. It's like nuts to me. I'm like, oh my God. And I get ads for this all the time. I'm like, Facebook, Instagram, what makes you think that I'm interested in this? Like
I constantly, when I get an ad for Noom, I report it as a scam.
Me too.
It's always because it is.
Call it bullying, like harassment or bullying. Oh my God, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to talk more about like what dieting as a child has done to like the way that you relate to food? Or
so I really like try to think back on like what dieting was like for a kid, and like I never went to Weight Watchers, so I didn't like get that aspect of it. And I think for me, there was definitely like this portion control stuff that my mom tried, and it was never really like strict, and it just didn't last long because let's be real, when you're a mom and you've got a hungry kid, the easiest thing to do is just let them eat, right? And not argue with them about whether they should have 3 chips or none. So for me, I think when I really started getting into diet culture, really had a lot to do with when I was like starting to date, as like trying to date other gay men and being rejected for being fat, right? So then it came to this place of like, I'm not worthy until I lose weight. And so I finally, like, I got to a point where, I was going to get serious about my life and prove something to people, right? So I think the first iteration was like me working with a personal trainer and like dieting more broadly, right? And, that looked like different things in terms of what's good to eat and what's bad to eat. But I think the thing that was the most detrimental in terms of dieting experiences is when I did a medical weight loss program. So I did one of those diets where you see a doctor and they prescribe you phentermine, which is described as the good fen from fen-phen, right? So remember when fen-phen was killing people? So I was on the good fen, which is essentially methamphetamine, right? It's an amphetamine. And I was restricted to maybe 700 calories a day and no more than 30 grams of carbohydrates.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
that's not a lot of calories.
I don't know, maybe 2. I don't know if you want to edit this a little bit, but I'm going to talk about a really restrictive diet. So if you don't want to hear about that, like fast forward for a minute. And so like I was on this really intense diet, right? And like I had to buy food from the doctor and it was super restrictive. And like you had to go in each week and they weighed you, and so it was like Weight Watchers, but run by your doctor, right? And like I lost a ton of weight really fast. I lost like, I'm not even gonna say how much. I lost a lot of weight in like 3 months. And I was really feeling myself, right? Because everybody's like, oh my gosh, you look so good. Like that's the addiction aspect of dieting, right? Is like you get really rewarded and people treat you differently when your body looks different.
And like kind of like the more extreme and the more like poor choices or like least healthy ways, you get the most because you get more dramatic results. So you get more compliments.
Exactly. And I did that diet, I want to say probably in like 2006 or 2006, probably 2007, right? I did that. So that was not very long ago, right? In terms of history. And with that diet, there were just so many rules, like, and it was strict, right? Like good carbs, bad carbs, eat this, don't eat that. You can only eat like a piece of meat this big, like you can only have 1 real meal a day and the meat had to be like that big. It was a lot, right? And that experience in and of itself, like really worked to internalize diet culture on me in a way that like didn't necessarily happen in childhood for me, right? But certainly came in later in life, right? So for me, like, I don't want kids to be going through that. And I don't know much about this app, but my understanding is that it's like, just looking at some of the pictures that I've seen online, it's like, what's your goal to lose weight? How many pounds are you going to lose? You're going to eat this. So it creates this calories.
You track your food.
Yeah, calories in, calories out, good food, bad food. And it's really just, there's research. I don't have the exact statistic. I can look it up and we can link it below. But there's clear research, and it's not just anecdotal, but like kids who diet are more likely to develop eating disorders, like people have done the research, right? We know that having kids diet leads to eating disorders. And I think it's important to emphasize here that like the American Academy of Pediatrics, like the specialists for healthcare for children, they don't even recommend diets for kids anymore because they acknowledge that kids' bodies are.
I was just looking for that.
Yeah, kids' bodies are growing, and it's like you can't restrict food. Like the biggest irony is that we know that like kids who are food insecure. So one of my areas of research is food insecurity, right? So we know that kids who are food insecure have a lot of negative health implications. So kids who don't eat regular meals and get enough food, they get sick more often, they miss more days of school, they are more likely to have attention deficit disorder, they're more likely to just like their brain isn't getting enough nutrition, so their brain doesn't physically develop in the way that it is meant to. So it's interesting to me that like on one hand, we have all of this information on what happens when you don't give kids enough food, right? But then so that a corporation like Weight Watchers can make money, right? We want to cheer and say, oh yeah, let's prevent kids who would otherwise have access to enough food from eating, right? It just, it gets me going.
Yeah, and regardless of whether it's Weight Watchers or not, dieting in children sets a precedent for like how you relate to food and your body for the rest of your life. You know, it like sets these fundamental feelings about what is appropriate and what is not. If you learn as an 8-year-old, like so for this app, like I'm an 8-year-old on a Weight Watchers app, and I learn that, you know, if I feel oppressed by diet culture, like obviously they're not thinking that, but if they feel like they don't fit in because their body is too big, then that sets in them this feeling that every time in their life that they start to feel those feelings, which is oppression from body, diet culture and our body standards, that's what they're going to turn to. It's like, oh, instead of like, let me work on my emotions and my thoughts and like analyzing the world that we live in, it's like, let me just change my body. Let me, you know, use these tools of dieting that I learned as a child. You know, it's like the first thing that you're going to think of because that's what you learned. That's what was set, you know, like ingrained in you. And I can say that for a fact because that's what happened to me. Instead of feeling like, oh, I feel like I get fat shamed a lot. And instead of thinking like, oh, why do people fat shame me? And what can I do about that? And how can I work on myself to like not let other people's opinions of me like cloud my own judgments and like my perception of myself and blah, blah, blah. I think, oh, I need to go on a diet. I need to change myself, you know, instead of thinking about like, do I need to change myself? And actually, no, I don't, you know? Oh my gosh. I just feel like setting these things like in children, you know, it's like you're planting the seed and that's what they want. Like, I just go back to like capitalism, you know, like that's what they want. They want to plant that seed so they have a customer for life.
And that's,
they know that dieting doesn't work. So they know that they'll have repeat customers, you know?
And let's be honest, like Weight Watchers is yes, one example of this, but so is Noom, so is MyFitnessPal, and all these other things, right? Like they are a business. They only make money if people are buying their service.
Yeah, they want you to come back.
And I think like Weight Watchers, like this isn't the first time in recent history where they went after kids, right? Like just a few months ago, probably the beginning of the year, they released that they were going to be like targeting teens, like and having special meetings for teenagers.
Oh.
Yeah. So like this is not a new strategy from Weight Watchers. They're just doubling down. Right? They're doubling down on targeting kids.
Even younger.
Even younger. And like, let's think about like an 8-year-old. So I have a nephew who's 7 and a niece who is 6. Actually I have some other like cousins who are young as well. But like my 7-year-old nephew, like I couldn't see him really comprehending a diet, right? Like,
yeah. Well, you know, like in school, I feel like in elementary school, when kids, I don't know what grade it is, but at some point in elementary school, kids have some kind of a health class or something, and they learn that like vegetables are good, and like pizza is bad, and they start like policing everyone. They're like, French fries, don't eat that, eat some broccoli, because kids are, you know, very impressionable, right? So you teach them these things, and I feel like it happens in elementary school around like first grade or something like that. They come home and all of a sudden it's like vegetables, because that's what they're getting at school, right? And so they're already learning to moralize food at school. I've seen this in my nieces and nephew. I've seen it in my friends' kids. Like, I used to work at an organic produce co-op. I saw it there and the kids that were there. They're already learning to moralize food at school. You know?
I think something I've heard like more dietitians talking about more recently is orthorexia, right? Which is not a diagnosable eating disorder, right? But it's something that more and more dietitians and counselors are even starting to recognize, is that so many people have an obsession with only eating good, healthy food, and it gets to a point where it actually starts limiting their life, right? So like they're actually not enjoying life and not enjoying food because they're so stressed out about only eating healthy or clean or whatever words they're using.
Yeah, but it's all like, it's not only like you're not enjoying life, but you are actively engaging in disordered thoughts about food. And it's not a technical eating disorder, but it's an eating disorder. It really is. And so like in the past like decade, or probably the last decade, you know, the Whole30 has become such a big thing. Clean eating has become such a big thing. Gluten intolerance or avoiding gluten, whether or not you have an intolerance, has become a huge thing.
Look at how dangerous carbs are.
Oh yeah, you know, like every decade there's like a devil, right? In the 80s it was fat, right? Everything was fat free. In the 90s it was sugar, maybe. I don't know what it was in the 90s.
Yeah, it's probably a transitional period of like moving away from fat and moving into like hating carbs and sugar, because that's where we're at now, where it's like
so it's been carbs for a while, like I would say since 2000, because there was like the South Beach diet and the Atkins. That was like the first wave of the low carb stuff. But even in the 90s, like people were doing keto, but it wasn't called the keto diet then. But I remember I had a babysitter who was on keto, and she smelled funny, and she's like, I was like rude, and I was like, why do you smell funny? And she's like, oh, I'm on this diet and I have to get into ketosis, and when I am in ketosis I smell like this. And I was just like, oh. But I remember at the time thinking, oh, I should get on ketosis, but I don't want to smell bad. But she had lost a bunch of weight, and I was like, oh, you know, I want that.
Ketosis was a really big part of that crazy, I don't want to say crazy, but that really awful medicalized diet that I was on, right?
Oh, okay.
Because you lose weight when you're in ketosis, right? So that's.
Did you smell weird?
I don't remember if I smelled weird. Actually, I think my pee smelled weird, but they blamed it because like they gave us vitamins to take too, and they're like, oh, it's just the vitamins. But it probably, hindsight, was probably ketosis, and they didn't want us to like freak out thinking.
Well,
like,
vitamins also can make your pee smell.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Maybe a little bit of both.
A little bit of both, right? It's easier to blame it on the vitamins than this really horrible thing you're doing to your body. So.
But yeah, so orthorexia, clean eating, it's to me, like, I've changed my opinion on this. In the beginning, I kind of like fell into the trap of clean eating, and you know, so I've been I was a vegetarian from a really young age, you know, throughout my life. I was vegan. I was a raw vegan, and it's really interesting lately. I've been trying to unpack. I'm kind of like always late to figuring out stuff, like my revelation that I just had, right? But I've been thinking about the way that I've eaten in my life, and especially since this app, I heard about it. All of this has been tumbling around, and it's just kind of coming out now. So it's not articulate. I'm sorry, everybody. But I'm still processing. But the fact is that I have always been a vegetarian for a long time, and that was because of the animal stuff, right? It wasn't a health thing at all for me. But then I would become a vegan, and I think it was disordered eating. I think that the times when I was a vegan, well, maybe not all of them, some of it was animal stuff, but I think some of the times when I was a vegan, and especially when I was a raw vegan, it was a diet that I wasn't calling a diet.
Yes.
And I didn't know. I didn't realize. I'm pretty
I've done that.
self-aware.
Guilty. I want to be a vegetarian. Yeah.
I didn't know. But I realize that now. And so so now with this whole like Whole30 craze, and clean eating and the gluten-free, like the wheat belly thing. There was a book called Wheat Belly. Anyway, all this stuff. I think that there is truth to it. Like I do actually have like a weird gluten intolerance that I inherited from my mom. It's not a stomach thing. It's like a weird body cramp thing. But so I do try to limit my gluten, but I still eat gluten. But like it's hard because there's like some truth in it for me. And so I'm not saying that people who eat gluten-free are liars or like don't need to do it. You know, everyone knows, you know your body, you know what you need, but it has made me so conscious of like, oh, like wanting to unpack, like, why am I eating like this?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know. It's like what we eat is so personal and so charged, you know, and people get really defensive about how they choose to eat. And I'm not here to tell anyone how to eat, but when I hear people, the people that I have known in my life who have done like the Whole30, right? I don't know any of them who have done it and it hasn't been like at least partly to be a diet. Mm-hmm. And so to me, the Whole30 is a diet, right? And I think that it's possible that it could not be a diet for someone, but I've never seen that happen, you know? So to me, stuff like the Whole30, people are like, oh, I'm going to start, you know, just eating clean. It's always a diet to me. And so that's how I view it. And so like seeing how popular it is like really disturbing to me because I just think they're not calling it a diet, but they're engaging in dieting. You know, like, oh, and yeah. Like, it's so hard because you know, everyone is responsible for their own body and their own actions. And so I'm not, you know, who am I to tell anyone what to do? But like, when I hear that like whole families, it's like, oh, we're all going to do the Whole30 together. It's concerning to me, you know, like if you have children, forcing everyone to do this, what I think is a diet, seems like not a great idea.
Like, so I think something perhaps that's maybe worth noting is like there are probably folks who might listen to us having this conversation and say, y'all are just like overthinking this. Like, why are you thinking so much about what you're eating? And I think it goes to like, it's worth saying that like, just because you haven't had this experience, right? Just because you don't have the experience of wanting to unpack how you're eating or like I think when I talk to people who are coming out of diet culture, right? Or who have moved on from diet culture, we all share this tendency of really being aware of our relationship to food and how we think about food and talk about food and you start to really become aware of all of the ways that we've become influenced to eat that are not necessarily of our own agency or choosing, right? So like to me, like the most personal thing that you can do in your life is choose what it is that you're going to eat, right? And we could take it a step further and we could compare it to sex too, right? Thinking about like the things like that are happening to your body and like there's a lot of agency in learning what it is that you like to eat, how much is enough for you. And for children, they don't have any agency in their eating. Like if you think about like, this is what I made for dinner, so you're gonna eat it, right? Whether you like it or not, this is what you have to eat. And then even to have other people deciding what is enough, right? And that's something that like you know, I'm working with intuitive eating. I wouldn't say that I'm like to a point where I'm like completely an intuitive eater, right? But just
it's learning. Hard.
It is learning
it's really
to like
hard.
to be like, how much food is going to be enough, right? When do I actually feel full? Knowing that like, I even remember as a kid being like we would eat lunch or eat dinner and then maybe an hour or so later I would be hungry again. Like I'd want to eat and being told, oh, you're not hungry, you just ate. And
drink some water.
Drink some water. And it's like, now like giving myself permission, well, maybe I am still a little bit hungry. And it really is a process of getting to know my body and what my body needs, and forgetting the diet stuff, right? Like, so like I know, I've learned like what is the best breakfast for me to eat, right? And allowing myself to eat that breakfast because it makes me feel satisfied. It holds me until lunch, right? But also allowing myself to have snacks along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so much of our culture is around this like restriction. You don't really know what your body needs, and listen to us and we'll tell you the best way.
Yeah. Well, it's like forcing people to all conform to one way of eating when we are so varied.
Yeah.
And everybody has different needs. Every body is different, but we're all lumped together and we're told this is what healthy looks like. This is how you should be eating. This is what you should eat and how much of it and how it should be prepared. I don't even know. But like so many thoughts are coming out. Let's like 6 different videos, but it's so much. I just so many things like that I want to say. I think that maybe we could have a series about this or something. But I want us to end like kind of like, I guess the question I'm thinking is like, what would you want to say to parents who are considering getting this app for their children? Like, what do you want to say as a child who dieted?
Yeah. So, yeah, if I was talking to a parent who wanted to offer this app to their child, I think I would start from a place where we began this conversation and say, number one, I know that you want what is best for your child, and I understand why you might want to do these things because you've either been told by a doctor that your child is unhealthy, or you're afraid that your child is being bullied or picked on, or maybe bullied and maybe picked on. And I totally understand why you would want to take care of your child. Mm-hmm. And I'm not criticizing you for wanting to take care of your child.
For loving them and wanting to
loving them. Yeah, you are doing exactly what you know how to do best. But I would also encourage you to really take some time to look at the research, and you don't have to take my word for it. 90% or 95% of diets fail, right? There is actually no scientific evidence that dieting has any long-term benefits for health. And in fact, this weight cycling that we've talked about, losing weight, gaining it back, losing weight, gaining it back, actually has more long-term consequences in terms of overall health than remaining at your current weight. Beyond that, like just knowing that introducing your child to diet culture this early in their life, or really ever, can really set them down a dangerous path of eating disorders and negative body image and all sorts of other big problems, right? And really consider, right, is this something, having them use this app, whether it's Kurbo from Weight Watchers or any other app, is that going to really accomplish for your child what you're looking for, right? And that'll be a decision that you have to make as a parent.
Mm-hmm. A hard decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boom. Ditto. I'm like, yes, ticking the boxes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the same stuff that I would want to say. I would just, like, less eloquently and articulately than you said. I'm always just like, I'm a mess. Yeah, I think I would just want, I'm like tearing up. Who knows what my life would have been like had I not been indoctrinated so hard into diet culture at such a young age. I don't know. I don't know what that would look like for me. I mean, I would have gotten it hard, as I became a teenager, because teenage girls, whoa. But, just like, I just would want to tell people, you know, like this doesn't have to be the way that you try to help your child through this, you know? And that information only comes in retrospect, you know? But I think in 2019, we know more, you know, than we did in like 1988 or whatever when I was put on Weight Watchers. I don't know. No, I don't think it was 1988, probably 1990. We know more, you know, and it's like when you know more or when you know, then you can do better. Like, so we know more stuff now. Let's do better for these kids so that they don't grow up having to deal with the same stuff. Anyway, I just feel so emotional about this because I know how it felt to be that kid in a Weight Watchers meeting, in an Overeaters Anonymous meeting.
I can't imagine.
The only child in a room full of adults talking about very adult feelings and feelings about their body. So I learned how to, you know, think very intense things about my body, partly by listening to other people who had a lifetime of self-hatred. I learned early, you know, like I got the Cliff's Notes on how to be mean to myself. Anyway, I would just want people to know that, you know, apps like this Kurbo or, you know, any kind of dieting that you put a child through is really impactful. Even just doing the Whole30 with your kids, it's very impactful. And it really sets the stage for how they're going to think about their bodies and food, you know?
You know, and I'm really curious, like now the more we're having this conversation, like I'm wondering if there's anyone out there doing intuitive eating work or body trust work for kids. Like, is there an alternative, right? So like, are there children's books or resources that focus more on helping children to develop positive relationships with food, right? Yeah. So
that's a good question.
Like that would be
there's got to be.
One would hope, right? Because there's a growing intuitive eating body trust movement. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage parents, like before you jump in and download that Kurbo app or Noom, get a book and work with your kid around building a positive relationship with food. Yeah. Because you don't need to change your child. Like that's the thing. Like being fat is okay, right? And it's so radical to say that, right?
I know, like, oh, there's going to be a lot of people. Some of you watching this are going to be like,
yeah,
really turned off by that, and not everyone, but I think it's still that's such a hard sell.
It is. It is okay a hard sell. Fat. So much of a hard sell, and I think that is really like. It's not just don't put your kid on a diet, right? Like I don't want you to put your kid on a diet because it's okay to be fat. You don't have to change. You don't have to change your child in the same way. And like so, it's like as like as a queer person, like I personally didn't get put through like deprogramming or pray the gay away therapy, but I have students who have gone through like that experience of like trying to like pray the gay away or somehow go through counseling to be converted to be straight. And like those students have really, human beings have really suffered through that process. And in the same way that like many people might hear me talk about that and say, oh, but there's nothing wrong with being gay or being trans, like if we're okay with that, then maybe it's time to start exploring like it is okay to be fat, and being fat doesn't mean that you're unhealthy and that you're going to die young. And that
I think that's exactly the key, though, is like as there are more studies that come out that show that being fat is not necessarily equating to being healthy or being unhealthy, that people are slowly starting to learn that. But you know, we're working off of lifetimes of opposite information.
Of fatphobia.
So it's slow. That's going to be slow going, you know, but it's heartening. More and more scientific, like real, credible studies and medical information, you know, comes out all the time, letting us know that not only is being fat not necessarily a death sentence, but that the weight cycling, the dieting, the stress on your body can actually create the diseases that people say come from being fat. It's not because you're fat, it's because you've spent your life weight cycling. So that's real science. If you haven't ever heard that before, that I'm like,
yeah, and maybe it's
real.
worth recommending and even putting a link in the bottom, like parents, if you're considering putting your kids on Weight Watchers or any other diet, read Health at Every Size first.
Yeah,
by Bacon.
It's a dry read, though.
It's a dry read, or I mean, read some articles about
something.
Health at Every Size. You know, yeah, I still haven't finished Health at Every Size, but like that first chapter where she really like breaks down, like, here's all the ways that you've been lied to about being fat.
Yeah.
I think is important.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna wrap up.
Yeah, we need to.
We can keep going for a long time.
All day.
But nobody wants to watch a movie length.
I do. I'm like,
listen,
I'm like over here, like, oh my god, I'm watching a Laura Burns video. Oh wait, I'm in a Laura Burns video.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I think that we have said a lot, and I'm really interested to hear from people who are watching this your reactions, and I welcome all of your reactions. If you super disagree with us, that's okay. You can disagree with us. I would ask that you be respectful in the comments, but I do want to hear from you. Like, you know, I don't think it's healthy for conversations like this to exist in a vacuum. You know, I always want people to ask questions and because I'm asking you to ask questions about what we're being told about diets and health and whatever. So, you know, I welcome questions and comments. I welcome your experiences. I would love to hear from y'all if you're watching this and you feel so moved to comment with your experiences. If you were a child that was put on a diet, if you were a child that did Weight Watchers, if you are a parent who has put your child on a diet or through Weight Watchers, please comment. Let us know. Like, I want this to be a conversation. You know, this is a community. Like, I'm really trying to build this community here. I want to hear from you, and I want to engage, and I want all of us to be really kind and respectful with each other. But Marc, and I hope that you'll kind of come in the comment section when this is posted and like
totally.
Also engage. I don't know. I don't think I have any specific questions. You know, like, oh, tell me, blah, blah, blah. I just want to hear your thoughts and experiences. Like, does this resonate with you, what we've been talking about?
Yeah, and if you're still watching, you've made it this far with us. Thank you, right? But one of the things I failed to mention when I was introducing myself is I also have a YouTube channel, and so Laura will provide a link, but if you want to know more about my experience and where I come from, I have several videos on my channel that talk about my experience as a fat person. And so, like, if you're wondering more about me and why it is that perhaps I have this perspective, I would encourage you to take some time and come and get to know me as well as much as you've gotten to know Laura over the last year or so.
Yeah, definitely check out Marc's channel and Instagram as well. So I'll put everything in the description box. Yeah, for sure. I'm so glad that you wanted to do this video with me because I love having your perspective, you know, something different than mine. Because, you know, you only know what you know. I can only speak for my personal experiences and thoughts. So it's really cool to have others. And also people in the comment section. That's why I really want to hear your experiences. Because not only like, oh, do I like selfishly want to hear them, but, you know, we all read each other's comments. And I think that it's helpful to see other people's experiences. So comment away.
Yes. Yes.
Share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. I feel like there's going to be a follow-up to this because
yes.
Maybe not this exact topic, but talking about, you know, diet culture, about relationships with food, about body image, all of this stuff. Like, this is, like I said, it's a never-ending process of swimming against the tide. I'm always thinking about it. Everything I create is like through the lens of this kind of thing. So yeah, thank you so much, Marc, for being here.
Thank you, Laura.
And sharing, being vulnerable.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking about making like my own little video on this, but I'm so glad that we got to talk about this together because,
Yeah.
um, yeah, just learning from you and your experience is
Oh.
so much more fun than me just talking at a camera all by myself. So.
Oh my God, I know. I know. Okay, well, we're going to end this because it's super long.
Yeah.
Enjoy, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this. Please comment if you feel compelled to do so. I really appreciate you, if you're still here, still watching this, or even if you watched literally any part of it. Thank you for taking the time and engaging in this community. Please comment on other people's comments. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much to the supporters who make it possible to create this content. If you've enjoyed my videos, learned anything, been inspired, or just want to keep seeing more content, please show me some love and consider supporting me on Patreon or ko-fi.com to make a one-time donation. Your support means everything to me. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you, your presence, your engagement, and our community. All the links will be in the description box below.